Imagine this, right? Every morning, like clockwork, I'm there planting a kiss on my husband's cheek. Our life? Picture perfect suburbia. The kind of place where you swear you could hear a sitcom laugh track in the background. It's all roses and sunshine, or so I thought. Now, let's fast forward to me volunteering at this charity event. I'm all smiles, laughter booming louder than the band playing. It's one of those moments, you know, where you feel like you're exactly where you're, but then, this guy, Mr. Charming Stranger, waltzes up to me with a drink. Thought you could use this, he says, smile all dazzling. And bam! Just like that, there's this spark. Haven't felt that in, God, years? Next thing I know, I'm sneaking texts with him. Every ding from my phone sends this thrill up my spine, mixed with a dollop of guilt. I'm doing mental gymnastics to keep my phone screen from my husband. It's like I'm back in high school, hiding my report card. Then, Mr. Charming UPS the ante. Escape with me, he says. A secluded beach, this weekend. Just us. My heart's racing, thoughts swirling. It's reckless, insane even. But it's like there's this magnetic pull, and saying no isn't in the cards. So, I spin this tale about a girl's weekend to my husband. His trusting eyes don't catch the lie, and it weighs on me like a ton of bricks. But the adventure, the secrecy of it all with the stranger, it's intoxicating. The beach weekend? Straight out of a romance novel. The kind you devour in one sitting. He's all stories and soft touches under the moonlight, swearing it's fate. And I'm there, lapping it up, drowning in this connection that feels too intense, too right to question. I'm telling you, it was a whirlwind. From believing in the perfect life to questioning what perfect even means. Each step, each action, felt like it was leading to something monumental. And boy, was it ever. So, picture this. I'm back home from that whirlwind beach escapade, right? But it's like I never really came back. My mind's still on that sandy shore, tangled up in whispers and waves. My husband's talking, doing that thing where he's trying to catch my eye, but I'm miles away. His words? Just background noise. And then there's my phone, buzzing with texts from him, Mr. Unbelievable. Every beep, every buzz, it's like a shot of adrenaline. Sneaking glances, hiding smiles, I'm in this bubble where it's just him and me. It's exhilarating, but, let me tell you, it's exhausting too. Before I know it, I'm slipping. Missing meetings, bailing on friends, all because I'm too caught up in this. Whatever it is. It's like I'm on this high, and everything else just doesn't measure up. My world's shrinking, and it's all because I can't resist that next message, that next secret rendezvous. Then, my husband, bless him, starts putting two and two together. He's no fool. Notices my long absences, the perpetual glow on my face that sure as heck isn't from the skincare routine he knows I don't have. He's looking at me, really looking, and I can see the wheels turning. One day, he finds it. A receipt from the beach resort, just casually hanging out in my purse. The look on his face? It's like I punched him in the gut. What's this? He asks, voice all shaky. And there I am, cornered, coming up with the most cliché line in the book. I needed some space, some time to think. The hurt in his eyes, it's like I'm watching his heart crack right there and then. But do I stop? No, sir, the affair? It's like a runaway train now. We're sneaking off whenever we can, making promises under a blanket of stars, promises that feel too big, too heavy to carry in the light of day. It's reckless, heady, and completely, utterly unsustainable. And there I am, caught in the middle of this mess, spinning lie after lie, watching the world I built with my husband crumble around me. It's a house of cards, and I just pulled the bottom one out. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button, it really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. Alright, so here's where things get really twisted. I'm deep in this fantasy, convinced I've hit the jackpot with Mr. Charming. My head's swirling with this idea that he's the one, my soulmate, even though this little voice in the back of my head keeps whispering, "Are you sure?" Then, out of nowhere, my husband, the man I promised to love and cherish, comes to me with this idea of couples therapy. Can you believe it? He's willing to work through this, through my mess. But me? I'm too far gone, too blinded by this intoxicating affair. We're beyond help, I tell him, and the look of desperation in his eyes. It haunts me. One night, I'm out, and I overhear Mr. Charming at the bar. He's boasting, can you believe? Bragging about his latest conquest, me. My heart doesn't just skip a beat, it feels like it stops. But when I confront him, he's all smiles and excuses, saying I got it all wrong. And me, like the fool I am, I choose to believe him. I want to believe him so badly that I start cutting ties left and right, diving headfirst into this lie I've convinced myself is love. But then, the final blow. My husband, the one person who's been my rock through everything, packs his bags and leaves. He leaves behind this note, all heartbreak and hope, saying he'll always love me and that he's waiting for me to come back. It's like a punch to the gut, a wake-up call I'm not ready for. Just when I think it can't get any worse, it does. I find out Mr. Charming isn't just my Mr. Charming. He's been playing the field, juggling women like it's his job. And when I confront him, expecting another excuse I can cling to, he drops the act. Cold and cruel, he tells me I was nothing but a distraction, a way to pass the time. It's like the floor's been ripped out from under me. Every lie, every whispered promise, it all crumbles away, leaving me with nothing but the harsh truth. I was played, and the cost? It's more than I can bear. Alright, let's dive into where it all starts to unravel, big time. After the whole disaster with Mr. Charming, I'm at rock bottom, right? So, I do the only thing that makes sense to me. I try to go back to my husband, thinking maybe, just maybe, we can patch things up. But guess what? He's moved on. Yeah. There's someone else making him smile now, someone not me. It's like a slap in the face, waking me up to what I've lost. I'm sitting there, trying to process it all, and it hits me hard. The life I took for granted, the man I thought would always be there waiting for me, it's all gone. And for what? A fling that left me emptier than ever. I'm craving the mundane moments I once rolled my eyes at, longing for a normalcy I thought was suffocating me before. As if the universe hasn't kicked me enough, I see him, Mr. Charming, parading around with his new flavor of the month. They're in our spots, the ones we laughed in, kissed in, made a million memories in. It's like he's intentionally twisting the knife, showing off his shiny new toy where he knows I'll see them. Feeling like a total pariah, I reach out to my old friends, hoping for some shred of life I left behind. But the cold, hard truth. I've burned those bridges too. The calls go unanswered, the messages unreturned. It's a lonely realization, knowing you're reaping the whirlwind of your own choices. So, what's a girl to do? I pull myself up by the bootstraps, or at least I try to. Job hunting, therapy sessions, you name it. I'm doing it all, trying to glue back together the pieces of the life I shattered. It's tough, humbling, and sometimes, it feels downright hopeless. But what choice do I have? Every attempt to reach out to my husband is met with a polite, no, thank you. It's clear. His heart, once mine to call home, is barricaded against me. The pain of rejection, of knowing I've caused irreparable damage, it's a constant ache, a reminder of the cost of my choices. And then, as if I needed another punch to the gut, I see them again, Mr. Charming and his latest conquest, laughing carelessly in a cafe we once loved. It's a cruel echo of a past that feels both like yesterday and a lifetime ago. The happiness I once knew now feels like a foreign concept, something I can only observe from the outside looking in. So, here I am, trying to piece together a life from the ruins of my decisions, learning the hard way that some mistakes, once made, carve out a void that no amount of regret can fill. It's a tough pill to swallow, realizing that the search for a fleeting thrill has cost me everything that once made my life whole. So, there I was, a complete mess but fired up with a kind of angry energy I didn't know I had in me. I'm thinking, if I can't fix my own disaster, maybe I can stop someone else from stepping into this nightmare. It's like, if I could save this new girl from Mr. Heartbreaker, maybe, just maybe, I could salvage a piece of my dignity. I start digging through every message, every photo, all the evidence of his two-timing ways. It's painful, you know? Reliving those moments, but with eyes wide open this time. I compile it all, this damning dossier on the man I once thought was my forever. Then, in the dead of night, fueled by a mix of wine and wild resolve, I send it all off to her, the new girl. Anonymously, of course. There's this part of me that's hoping she'll see the light, ditch the guy, and save herself a world of hurt. But then, the backlash. He finds out, shows up at my door, all fury and accusation. Jealous? Petty? Me? I want to laugh in his face, but his words, they slice through me. Because, deep down, part of me wonders if he's right. Word gets out, because of course it does. Small town, smaller circles. Suddenly, I'm not just a woman who wrecked her own marriage. I'm the vindictive ex-lover, the crazy lady spreading lies. Friends, are those I thought were friends, they start keeping their distance. It's like I've got this scarlet letter branded on me. And then, the kicker. She stays with him. Despite everything, she chooses to believe his lies over the cold, hard proof. It's a gut punch, realizing my grand gesture of warning was for nothing. The world I knew, the people I cared about, it all seems to slip further and further away. I hit rock bottom, feeling more isolated than ever. But then, something shifts. Maybe it's desperation. Maybe it's a search for meaning in this mess, but I turn to volunteer work. I pour myself into it, helping those who have nothing to do with my past, my mistakes. It's not redemption, not really, but it's a start. A way to fill the days, to try to make sense of the chaos I've caused. Slowly, I start to find a bit of peace, not in the forgiveness of others, but in the act of giving. It's no fairy tale ending, no sudden epiphany where everything makes sense. But it's something. A glimmer of hope in a story that's had too little of it. Here's the thing. Life's got this funny way of kicking you when you're down. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, I see it. My husband's wedding pictures plastered all over social media. There he is, all smiles, looking at his new bride the way he used to look at me. It's like a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of the life I threw away for a fleeting fantasy. Fast forward a bit, and I'm at this local event, trying to blend into the background. But then, across the crowd, I spot him, Mr. Charming, the cause of all my woes. Just seeing him there, it sends this sharp pang of regret through me. What was I thinking? As I'm leaving, trying to keep my head down, I overhear the whispers. That's her, the woman who chose a stranger over her husband. It's like I'm wearing a scarlet letter, a label I can't shake off. It stings, knowing that's how I'm defined now, by my worst mistake. So, I do what any sensible person in my shoes would do, I find a new place to call home. A small apartment, nothing like the warm, inviting home I once shared with my husband. It's cold, impersonal, a constant reminder of how much I've lost. But then, something unexpected happens. I adopt a dog, a scruffy little thing with more love to give than I ever imagined possible. This dog, he doesn't care about my past, my mistakes. His affection is unconditional. A stark contrast to the complicated mess of human relationships I've tangled myself in. Inspired by this newfound perspective, I start writing a blog. It's nothing fancy, just me pouring my heart out, sharing my story in the hopes of warning others about the dangers of infidelity. It's raw, it's real, and somehow, it starts to resonate. People begin to follow my journey, sharing their own stories of betrayal and heartbreak. It's a small community, but it's something. A connection to others who understand the pain of making unforgivable mistakes. This blog, it becomes my therapy, my way of making amends, even if only to myself. It's not redemption, not by a long shot, but it's a start. A step towards forgiving myself, towards rebuilding from the rubble of my choices. And in the midst of it all, I find a sliver of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's a chance for a new beginning. Just when I thought I was invisible, lost in the sea of my own mess, something incredible happens. I get this message, right? It's from a woman who's been following my blog. She tells me, your story stopped me in my tracks, made me see the edge I was walking towards. Thank you for saving me from making the same mistake. Can you believe it? My mess, my disaster, helped someone. It's this unexpected beacon of light in the darkness I've been wading through. Buoyed by this, I start putting myself out there more. I'm talking at local events, sharing the raw, unfiltered truth of my journey. It's scary, laying it all bare, but it feels like I'm finally turning my shipwreck of a story into a lighthouse for others. Finding purpose in the pain, you know? But let's be real, the nights are still tough. I'm lying there, staring at the ceiling, and the ache for my husband's forgiveness is this constant companion. It's like no matter how many people I reach, how many might benefit from my cautionary tale, that one person's forgiveness, the one that matters most, feels like a universe away. Then, one day, I catch wind of Mr. Charming's latest romantic casualty. Part of me, that petty, hurt part, feels this flicker of vindication. But it's fleeting, gone as quick as it came because, at the end of the day, it changes nothing of my own situation. I'm out walking the dog, right? This little ball of fur that's become my shadow. We're passing through the park, and it's like I've stumbled into couple central. Everywhere, people holding hands, wrapped up in their own little worlds. And there's me, feeling every inch the outsider. This is where it hits me, the full weight of what I've lost. I find this bench, a little island in the midst of all this love and life going on around me. I'm sitting there, just me and my thoughts, and my hand goes to my wedding ring. It's still there, a band of cold metal, but it might as well be a chain around my heart. It's in this moment, this quiet, piercing moment, that I realize no amount of blogging, speaking, or sharing can fill the void left by my choices. No amount of public redemption can stitch back together the fabric of a heart torn by betrayal and regret. So, there I am, alone on a park bench, the symbol of my broken vows heavy on my finger. It's a sobering end to a chapter one never thought I'd write. But here's the thing about stories, especially the real, messy, human ones, they don't always wrap up neatly with a bow. Sometimes, they just end, leaving you with nothing but the lessons learned and the hope that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow might be 5 years, huh? I murmured, twirling the stem of my wineglass as Michael and I sat across from each other in our favorite local spot. It was nothing fancy, just like us, him, a tech guy who could fix anything from a frozen laptop to a broken heart, and me, lost in the world of books, always one page away from a different life. The clink of our glasses should have felt like a celebration, a milestone. But as I looked into Michael's eyes, full of love and unwavering trust, a restless itch crept up my spine. It was an itch for something new, something thrilling. That itch only grew stronger a few nights later, surrounded by laughter and too many cocktails with the girls. I just need a little excitement, I confessed, my voice a blend of longing and guilt. The words felt like a betrayal, not just to Michael but to the life we'd built together. Yet, they hung there, an undeniable truth I couldn't shake off. Excitement found me sooner than I expected, in the form of Alex. He was the unexpected splash of color in my grayscale world, capturing moments with his camera that seemed to scream adventure. Our conversation at the beach event wasn't planned, it was fate playing its hand. His smile, his charm, they were intoxicating, and before I knew it, I was drawn into his orbit. The affair began with a whisper, a secret only the sea and the seagulls were privy to. Our meetings were stolen moments, hidden away from prying eyes, where the world consisted of just Alex and me. Each laugh, each touch, was a brushstroke on a canvas I never knew I was painting. But secrets, especially those bathed in guilt and forbidden pleasure, have a way of clawing their way to the surface. Zoe, my friend who missed nothing, saw us one evening. The look in her eyes, it was a mirror to my own fear. The fear of being caught, of losing everything for a fleeting desire. Michael's suspicions came like the slow rise of dawn, inevitable yet still shocking. The late nights, my guarded phone. They were breadcrumbs leading him straight to the truth I wasn't ready to face. His questions about my whereabouts, the unusual shifts at work, they all pointed to a storm brewing on the horizon. Sitting there, watching the man I married grow more distant with each passing day, I was at war with myself. A part of me wanted to scream out the truth, to shatter the illusion of our perfect life. But another part, the part that craved the thrill of the secret, of Alex, kept me silent. As the chapter of our 5th anniversary closed, leaving us on the precipice of an unknown future, I couldn't help but wonder, was the excitement worth the price? The answer, though I wasn't ready to admit it, lay quietly in the wreckage of the trust one had so carelessly shattered. The moment Michael pulled that hotel receipt from my purse, my heart didn't just skip a beat, it practically stopped. "What's this?" His voice was calm, too calm. It was for a night I'd told him I was buried in paperwork at the store. "Oh, that?" I scrambled for an explanation, my mind racing. "It's a surprise. I was planning a weekend getaway for us." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but desperation made it sound convincingly sweet. He looked at me, a flicker of doubt in his eyes, then smiled. "Really? That sounds amazing, babe." And just like that, the confrontation I dreaded evaporated. But the relief was short-lived, replaced by a heavy cloak of guilt as I watched the trust in his eyes, undiminished by my deceit. The affair with Alex, which had started as a thrilling escape, was morphing into something more intense, more demanding. Our clandestine meetings were no longer just about stolen moments. They were becoming the core of my day, eclipsing the life I had with Michael. It was during one of those rare moments of solitude that Zoe cornered me. "Laura, what are you doing?" Her voice was a mix of concern and accusation. "This isn't you, think about what you're risking." I shrugged off her words with a laugh that sounded more hollow than I intended. "I've got it under control," I lied, both to her and to myself. I believed I could navigate the treacherous waters between my marriage and my affair without capsizing. Zoe wasn't convinced, but I wasn't looking for conviction. Alex's patience, however, was wearing thin. "I can't keep doing this," he said one evening, his frustration slicing through the warm air between us. "It's me or him, Laura. I'm tired of being your secret." His ultimatum hit me like a cold wave. The thought of choosing was paralyzing. With Michael, it was the comfort of a shared history, a love that was familiar and warm. With Alex, it was the allure of passion, of something new and intoxicatingly uncertain. Standing at the crossroads, the weight of my decisions pressing down on me, I realized the gravity of the game I was playing. The stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined, and the price of my indecision could be the very life I was trying to escape. As the chapter of my life twisted towards an unknown ending, I found myself caught in the web of my own lies and desires, struggling to find a way out that wouldn't destroy everything I held dear. The world seemed to pause, suspended in a moment of clarity that was as sharp as it was unwelcome. There I was, caught in the eye of a storm I had brewed, torn between the steady warmth of my marriage with Michael and the electrifying thrill of my affair with Alex. My heart, a traitor to both causes, refused to choose a side. The decision, when it came, wasn't so much a choice as it was a surrender to my basest desires. "I can manage this," I whispered to my reflection, a vow to continue the double life I had been leading. The affair would remain my secret, a shadow life that thrived in the hidden corners of my days. But secrets, as I was soon to find out, have a way of unraveling at the seams. In a moment of careless haste, my worlds collided. A message, intended for Alex's eyes only, found its way to Michael. "Can't wait to see you later," it read, a ticking time bomb delivered straight into the hands of my husband. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Michael's silence was a vacuum that sucked all the air out of the room, leaving me gasping for breath. When he finally spoke, his voice was a calm that belied the storm raging in his heart. "We need to talk," he said, but the conversation I had dreaded never came. Instead, he retreated, a detective in his own marriage, sifting through the debris of our life together for evidence of my betrayal. The anniversary dinner that should have been a celebration of our love became the stage for my reckoning. Michael's calm demeanor throughout the evening was a prelude to the storm that was about to break. As he presented me with a gift, beautifully wrapped as if to mock the ugliness it concealed, my heart sank. Tearing open the paper with trembling hands, I found not a token of affection but a mirror reflecting the worst version of myself. There, amidst the remnants of my shattered illusions, lay the printed proof of my duplicity, messages, emails, snippets of a love that was never meant to be shared. The silence that followed was deafening, the air thick with the weight of words left unsaid. Michael's eyes, once a source of comfort, were now wells of sorrow and betrayal. "I thought we were building something together," he said, his voice a whisper that cut deeper than any shout could. In that moment, the full magnitude of my actions crashed into me with the force of a tidal wave. The pain I had caused, the trust one had shattered, it was all laid bare, a wound that no words could heal. As the evening wore on, the dinner that was meant to be a celebration of our past became a funeral for our future. Each bite, each sip, was a reminder of what had been lost. And as the night drew to a close, I was left with the haunting realization that some mistakes, once made, can never be undone. The moment the words left Michael's mouth, my world didn't just crumble, it shattered. "I had planned to renew our vows tonight," he said quietly, the pain evident in his voice. His eyes, once warm and loving, now held a depth of sorrow that pierced me to the core. The man who had stood by me, who had loved me unconditionally, stood before me, a victim of my selfish desires. I stared at the collection of messages I'd exchanged with Alex, each word a nail in the coffin of our marriage. The weight of my betrayal, tangible in my hands, was overwhelming. I had imagined countless scenarios of how this night could go, but none came close to the reality. Michael's disappointment, his heartbreak, was a mirror reflecting the worst parts of myself. The dinner, once meant to be a celebration of our love, ended with Michael's quiet departure. "I need time to think," were his last words before he walked out, leaving me drowning in a sea of guilt and remorse. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark reminder of the void his absence left in my heart. In my desperation, I reached out to Michael, calling, texting, anything to bridge the gap my betrayal had created. But he remained unreachable, a clear sign he needed space to heal from wounds I had inflicted. Loneliness became my constant companion, driving me to seek solace in the one person I thought could understand, Alex. But the connection that once seemed thrilling now felt empty, devoid of the secrecy that had fueled our affair. When I broached the idea of us starting anew, his response was a cold splash of reality. "I'm not looking for anything serious," he said, his indifference the final blow to my already fragile state. That moment marked my complete breakdown. The affair had ended, leaving me to face the ruins of my marriage alone. The realization of my mistake hit me with brutal clarity. I had risked everything for a fleeting thrill, and in doing so, I had lost the one person who truly mattered. As I sat in the quiet of our now empty house, the full magnitude of my actions settled in. My affair, once a secret escape, had become my prison, isolating me from the love and life I once cherished. In my quest for excitement, I had destroyed the very foundation of my happiness. The path to redemption seemed insurmountable, a journey I was now forced to undertake alone, haunted by the echoes of a love lost to my unforgivable choices. The silence was deafening, each tick of the clock a reminder of the chasm between Michael and me. With a shaky hand, I typed out a message, my phone screen blurred through tears. "Michael, please, can we talk? I'm so sorry," sent. Then another, and another, each one a desperate plea for forgiveness, for a chance to explain the unexplainable. But as days turned into weeks, my inbox remained a barren landscape of my own making, each unread message a stone in the wall Michael had built around himself. The isolation was palpable, friends who had once filled our home with laughter now crossed the street to avoid my shame. Family gatherings became minefields, each conversation skirting around the elephant in the room. My world, once vibrant and full, had contracted to the size of my loneliness. Then, the divorce papers arrived. They were unceremonious in their delivery, a stark white envelope that weighed more than any book I'd ever held. Michael's signature was there, a final stroke of ink that severed the last tie of our entwined lives. The proceedings were a blur of legal jargon and signatures, a stark contrast to the vows we had once made to each other. Moving out was a quiet affair. I packed my life into boxes, each item a fragment of a dream we had built together. The hardest to pack was a small box of memories, photographs, ticket stubs, a dried-up corsage from our first dance. With each item I placed inside, I felt a piece of my heart tuck away with it. I heard about Michael's new beginning through the grapevine, a bitter pill to swallow. He was moving on, focusing on healing, on rebuilding the life I had torn down. The news should have brought me some comfort, knowing he was finding peace. Instead, it was a stark reminder of the consequences of my choices. In the end, I was left with nothing but the echoes of a love lost, a stark reminder of the cost of betrayal. The chapter of our lives together had closed, leaving me to navigate the aftermath of my decisions, a journey I would have to take alone. The silence of my new, stark apartment was a far cry from the life I once knew. As I sat there, surrounded by unpacked boxes that seemed as out of place as I felt, the weight of my decisions pressed heavily on me. The realization of the hurt I caused Michael and the love I squandered was a bitter pill that no amount of tears could wash away. One day, seeking solace in the anonymity of the bustling city, I found myself at the park. That's when I saw him, Michael. He was far enough that the details were blurred, but there was no mistaking his posture, the way he laughed with someone I couldn't see. He looked happy, peaceful even. The contrast between his contentment and my turmoil was as stark as night and day. Gathering every ounce of courage, I approached him. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and hope, clinging to the slim chance of forgiveness, of a word or a look that could mend the chasm between us. But as we finally stood face to face, the polite yet distant smile he offered me shattered any illusions of reconciliation. "I wish you all the best, Laura," he said, his voice void of the warmth I once knew. It was clear there was no going back. The fallout from my personal life soon spilled over into my professional one. My job at the bookstore, once a refuge, became a series of missed steps and mistakes. Eventually, my boss, with a pained expression, told me it was over. I was out. The dismissal felt like yet another link severed from the life I once cherished. Starting over wasn't easy. I found a job at a local coffee shop, a humbling change from the world of literature I so loved. Yet, in the simplicity of brewing coffee and serving pastries, I found a semblance of peace. It was in this unlikely place that I began to understand the value of simplicity, the beauty of a life uncluttered by deceit and betrayal. One day, through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, I heard that Alex had moved to another city. The news, which once would have devastated me, now felt like the closing of a book I no longer wished to read. His departure marked the end of the affair, not with a bang but with a quiet resignation. Alone in my apartment, now slowly becoming a home, I reflected on the journey. The pain, the loss, and the stark realization of my flaws had paved the way for a new beginning. Working in the coffee shop, embracing the daily grind, I learned the importance of honesty, not just with others but with myself. As I looked out at the city that had witnessed my highest highs and lowest lows, I understood that starting over wasn't just about changing jobs or moving apartments. It was about redefining who I was, learning from my mistakes, and moving forward with a newfound appreciation for the simple, honest moments that life offers. The empty walls of my new apartment seemed to echo back the turmoil inside me. Alone, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked, the weight of my actions pressed heavily on my chest. It was here, in this stark, unfurnished reality, that the magnitude of my choices became undeniably clear. I had hurt the one person who had stood by me through everything, and the love I once took for granted was now a ghost haunting the edges of my new life. A chance encounter in the park threw me back into the eye of the storm. From a distance, I saw Michael. He was a picture of peace, his laughter reaching me across the green expanse, a stark contrast to the chaos within me. The sight of him, so content and unburdened, was a sharp reminder of the divide between our worlds now. Gathering every ounce of courage, I approached him, seeking closure, maybe even a sliver of forgiveness. "Michael," I called out, my voice barely a whisper against the breeze. He turned, and for a moment, it felt like no time had passed. Yet, the polite, distant smile he offered me said otherwise. We spoke, words that danced around the depth of our shared pain. He wished me well, a kindness that felt like a dagger. It was clear there was no path back to what we once had. In the aftermath, the cracks in my life grew wider. The stress, the sleepless nights, the endless loop of what-ifs had taken their toll, affecting my job performance. The bookstore, once my refuge, became a stage for my final act of failure, my dismissal. It was a low point, a tangible sign that the consequences of my actions extended beyond broken hearts. Starting over wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. I found a job at a coffee shop, a world away from the shelves of books that knew all my secrets. It was humbling, a daily reminder of how far I'd fallen. Yet, in the simplicity of brewing coffee and the smiles of strangers, I found a semblance of peace. My journey to redemption was slow. Rebuilding friendships, especially with Zoe, required swallowing my pride and facing the hurt I'd caused head-on. Therapy sessions became my lifeline, a place to unravel the why behind my actions and to forge a path toward understanding and forgiveness. Volunteering at the local community center offered a glimpse of hope, a chance to give back and to fill the void with something meaningful. It was here, among faces that knew nothing of my past, that I began to see the possibility of a future defined by more than my mistakes. Tentatively, I stepped back into the world of dating, armed with a newfound commitment to honesty and transparency. Each tentative connection was a step away from the person I was and a step toward who I wanted to be. The lessons learned were hard-won. Communication, trust, the bedrock of any relationship, became my mantra, a vow to never repeat the past. Independence, once a word that filled me with dread, became my strength, a source of pride in the life I was rebuilding from the ground up. Yet, even as I embraced this new chapter, the shadow of my downfall lingered. The void left by the end of my marriage was a chasm that stretched wide and deep. My new life, for all its stability and growth, couldn't replicate the depth of connection, the shared history I had with Michael. Watching a couple in the park, their laughter light and easy, a mirror to a past life, I faced the truth. I had grown, learned, and even found a measure of peace. But the cost was irrevocable, the loss of my marriage, the love and life I once cherished. There was no redemption from that, only the stark realization that some choices, once made, leave a mark that shapes the rest. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the insistent vibrations slicing through the quiet like a knife. Panic clawed at my throat, icy tendrils reaching for my heart. David was on a weekend getaway, a desperate attempt to reignite the spark in our marriage. Yet, here it was, a message on his phone, right next to the untouched mug of coffee I'd made him this morning. I snatched the phone, my hand trembling slightly. The screen displayed a single, unfamiliar number. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a work contact, none of his usual buddies. A wave of nausea washed over me. Before I could convince myself it was nothing, another message popped up. It was short, just 2 words, but they sent the world around me tilting on its axis. Meet me later. Usual spot. My stomach lurched. Usual spot? This wasn't a client, a colleague, this was someone else. The blood drained from my face, leaving me cold and clammy. Who was this? What was going on? Images of him laughing with another woman, holding hands, flashed through my mind. The years of loyalty, the routine of our life together, felt like a flimsy curtain ripped away, revealing a shocking truth I wasn't sure I could handle. My fingers hovered over the screen, the urge to unlock the phone, a battle raging within me. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to confront him, to see with my own eyes the betrayal playing out. But another voice, a chilling voice of caution, whispered that ignorance might be the safest option. What if it was nothing? What if I opened a Pandora's box I couldn't close? The phone buzzed again, jolting me back to reality. This time, the message was for me. It was Mark, the new artist across the street, the man I'd been indulging in stolen glances and late-night texts. His message was simple. Thinking of you. My vision blurred, the phone slipping from my grasp as it clattered onto the nightstand. David and Mark, 2 men on opposite ends of my life, both seemingly harboring secrets. In that moment, the carefully constructed world I'd built began to crumble around me, and I was left with a chilling question. Whose betrayal would shatter me first? My stomach churned like a washing machine on high spin. David stood there, his face ashen, the phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. The birthday dinner dishes remained untouched, the flickering candlelight casting grotesque shadows on the wall. Whose phone is this? He rasped out, his voice barely a whisper. My breath hitched in my throat. It was Mark's phone, the one I'd forgotten in my purse, a damning piece of evidence in the wreck of my deception. My mind raced, searching for an escape, an excuse that wouldn't crumble under scrutiny. That's. I stammered, my voice failing me. He flipped the phone open, his thumb hovering over the unlock button. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum solo threatening to burst out of my chest. He glanced at me, his eyes filled with a chilling mix of hurt and betrayal. Password? He demanded, his voice devoid of emotion. My mind went blank. A password? I hadn't even thought about a password. Panic clawed at me, squeezing the air from my lungs. I blurted out the first thing that came to mind, a desperate plea disguised as a joke. Seriously, babe? It's my phone. You checking up on me now? My voice cracked, the forced lightness a dead giveaway. He held my gaze for a beat too long, then, with a slow, deliberate movement, unlocked the phone. The screen lit up, displaying the incriminating messages in all their damning glory. Mark's name blazed at the top, followed by a string of texts that left no room for interpretation. Each sweet nothing, each stolen moment, laid bare for David to see. His face contorted in a mixture of anger and disbelief. The birthday card I'd bought him slipped from his grasp, fluttering to the floor like a dying butterfly. The silence in the room was thick enough to choke on, broken only by the insistent drip 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 of the faucet in the kitchen sink. So this is what, working late, has been about, he finally said, his voice laced with a bitterness that sent shivers down my spine. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Shame, hot and suffocating, washed over me. The carefully constructed facade I'd built crumbled to dust, leaving me exposed and raw. Don't bother, he cut me off, his voice flat. He tossed the phone back at me, the clatter echoing in the deafening silence. Just get out. The weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at him, the man I'd shared 10 years of life with, the man I'd betrayed in the worst way possible. But instead of anger or defiance, a wave of crushing loneliness washed over me. In that moment, I understood the true cost of my actions. He wasn't just throwing me out, he was throwing away everything we'd built together. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. The room seemed to spin, the familiar surroundings morphing into a distorted reflection of my shattered life. With a choked sob, I turned and walked out, leaving a trail of unspoken apologies and a lifetime of regrets hanging heavy in the air. The courthouse doors slammed shut behind me, the echoing bang a punctuation mark on the end of our marriage. David, impeccably dressed and looking 10 years younger, walked out a few steps ahead, his face an emotionless mask. We hadn't spoken a word the entire time, the air thick with unspoken accusations and a suffocating silence. As I stepped out into the bright sunshine, a wave of dizziness washed over me. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the familiar street scene morphing into a blurry mess. Leaning against the cold stone wall, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Suddenly, a voice pierced through the fog of my misery. "There you are." I looked up, squinting against the sunlight. Mark, his face etched with worry, stood a few feet away. Relief flooded through me, a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. "Mark," I exclaimed, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank God you're here." He rushed to my side, his arm wrapping around my shoulders in what felt like a desperate attempt to hold me up. "I was worried sick," he murmured. "I tried calling you, but your phone kept going straight to voicemail." Shame burned in my cheeks. The phone, David, in his chillingly calm way, had kept it during the settlement. My only link to Mark, the man who'd ignited the fire that had ultimately consumed my life, was gone. "David," I started, the weight of the situation threatening to pull me under. "Don't worry about him." Mark cut me off, his voice hardening. "He's out of the picture now. We can finally be together." A flicker of unease sparked in my gut. Together, the word felt alien, a stark contrast to the harsh reality of my situation. I was jobless, homeless, and utterly alone, except for a man whose motives were suddenly shrouded in suspicion. "Mark," I said hesitantly, "about the money." His smile faltered for a brief moment, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place crossing his eyes. "Money?" He chuckled, the sound hollow and forced. "Honey, we don't need his money. I have a surprise for you. Come on, I'll show you." He grabbed my hand, his grip surprisingly tight. My initial relief curdled into a cold dread. The warmth of his touch felt like a shackle, binding me to a future I no longer recognized. As he led me away from the courthouse, the weight of a terrible truth settled upon me. In my blind pursuit of passion, I hadn't just destroyed my marriage, I might have just handed myself over to an even greater danger. The shrill ring of the phone shattered the fragile peace of my tiny apartment. It was like a physical blow, jolting me out of the daydream I'd been clinging to for comfort. I wasn't prepared to answer the call. Every unknown number felt like a potential threat, a reminder of the tangled web I'd woven around myself. But the ringing wouldn't stop, a persistent itch that demanded scratching. Hesitantly, I picked up the phone, my voice barely a whisper. "Hello?" A gruff voice, laced with a hint of amusement, filled my ear. "Is this the ex-Mrs. David Thompson?" My breath hitched. My married name felt like a foreign language on my tongue, a relic from a life that had irrevocably crumbled. "Who is this?" I managed, my voice trembling slightly. "A concerned citizen," the voice chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. "Let's just say, I know a thing or two about Mr. Mark Johnson's artistic endeavors." Mark Johnson? The name hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of my naivety and the devastating consequences of my choices. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum solo drowning out everything else. "What are you talking about?" I stammered, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. "Oh, honey," the voice drawled, "you have no idea." But let's just say, his struggling artist routine might be a tad bit embellished. A cold dread seeped into my bones, chilling me to the core. Embellished? What did that even mean? Before I could pry further, the collar hung up, leaving me with a gnawing sense of unease and a terrifying question. Just how much did I really know about the man I'd thrown my life away for? Panic clawed at my throat. I scrambled for my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I desperately searched for Mark Johnson, artist. The results that populated the screen felt like a punch to the gut. There were no paintings, no exhibits, no artistic accolades. Instead, there were mugshots, news articles, and a string of angry online reviews all linked to a notorious conman who preyed on lonely women, using their desperation to line his own pockets. The blood drained from my face as the horrifying truth slammed into me. Mark wasn't an artist, he was a predator. And I, blinded by a foolish infatuation, had been his latest victim. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. The carefully constructed image of a passionate love affair shattered into a million pieces, leaving behind a desolate landscape of regret and despair. David's silent apology, the bouquet of lilies, suddenly felt like a beacon of misplaced kindness compared to the manipulative web I'd entangled myself in. With trembling hands, I dialed the number again, a desperate plea for answers forming in my throat. But this time, the line went straight to voicemail. Mark, the charming artist, the man who'd promised me a passionate escape, had vanished, leaving me alone to face the wreckage of my shattered life. The insistent knock on the door shattered the uneasy silence clinging to my apartment. My heart lurched, a hummingbird trapped in my chest. It was too early for Mark, and the friends who surrounded him lately weren't known for their subtlety. With a deep breath, I cautiously approached the door, peering through the peephole. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't Mark or any of his dubious associates. Standing on the other side was a woman, her face etched with a mixture of anger and concern. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. Before I could decide whether to answer, she spoke, her voice laced with barely concealed hostility. "Are you, your name?" "Yes," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "Good," she said, her eyes hardening. "I need to talk to you about Mark Johnson." The name sent a jolt of electricity through me. Fear, cold and sharp, clawed at my insides. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice gaining strength. "The name's Sarah," she spat back. "And let's just say, I'm not the first woman Mark has charmed." A wave of nausea washed over me. Another victim? The pieces started to click into place, a horrifying mosaic of Mark's deceit forming in my mind. I fumbled with the lock, the door creaking open a fraction. "Look, I don't know what you—" I began, but she cut me off. "Don't play dumb," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "He's a con man, honey." The whole struggling artist act? A lie. The accident? Never happened. He preys on women, uses their loneliness to line his pockets. Her words were a brutal echo of the truth I desperately tried to ignore. Shame burned in my cheeks, a searing brand of my own stupidity. I stammered, searching for a coherent response. "He's done this before," Sarah continued, her voice raw with emotion. "He uses different names, different stories, but the game's always the same. You're just the latest Mark." The weight of her words crashed down on me, suffocating me with the realization of how badly I'd been played. This wasn't just about a failed affair. It was about a calculated manipulation. A carefully constructed web of lies that had left me emotionally and financially broken. Can you tell me more?" I pleaded, a desperate thirst for the truth gnawing at me. Sarah hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Come inside," she said, pushing past me into the cramped apartment. As she spoke, detailing Mark's elaborate cons and the trail of broken hearts he'd left in his wake, a cold fury began to simmer within me. It wasn't enough to wallow in self-pity. I needed to expose him, to prevent him from hurting another woman. The night deepened as Sarah shared her story, each revelation chipping away at the last vestiges of my misplaced loyalty. By the time she left, a steely resolve had settled in my gut. Mark Johnson, the charming artist, the man who'd shattered my life, wouldn't get away with this. I would see to that. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a relentless mosquito refusing to be swatted away. It was the third time I'd called David's number, each unanswered ring a hammer blow to my already fractured heart. Panic, cold and clammy, wrapped its icy tendrils around my throat. This wasn't like him. David was a creature of habit, punctuality bordering on near obsession. We might not have been speaking, but a call, a text, anything, would have been normal. The silence on the other end was deafening, a void screaming with unspoken dread. Just as despair threatened to consume me, a knock on the door shattered the tense silence. Relief flooded my system, a surge of adrenaline chasing away the creeping fear. I rushed to the door, flinging it open without hesitation. "Hey, it's Sarah," she said, her voice laced with concern. "I tried calling, but your phone kept going straight to voicemail." "Sarah," I breathed, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. Maybe she knew what was going on, why David wasn't answering. Come in, come in." She stepped inside, her eyes taking in the meager surroundings. "Look," she began, her voice hesitant. "There's something you need to see." She pulled out her phone, her finger hovering over the screen for a beep too long. A cold dread seeped into my bones, a premonition so strong it felt like a physical blow. "It's about the fire," she said softly. "Fire?" My mind reeled, struggling to catch up. "What fire?" My gaze darted to the screen, where a local news report played. Smoke billowed from a towering apartment building, flames licking at the night sky. My breath hitched as the caption rolled across the bottom of the screen. Several injured, one fatality reported. And then, the address. It was David's address. The blood drained from my face, the world around me dissolving into a blurry mess. The phone slipped from Sarah's grasp, clattering to the floor with a sickening thud. A choked sob escaped my lips, a primal cry of anguish and terror. David? Gone? It couldn't be true. This was some horrible mistake, a cruel twist and a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Sarah grabbed my arm, her touch a lifeline in the storm of emotions threatening to drown me. We need to go to the hospital, she said, her voice firm but laced with sympathy. The car ride was a blur of flashing lights and choked back tears. Each passing minute felt like an eternity, the weight of the unknown pressing down on me with suffocating force. At the hospital, the sterile silence of the waiting room mocked my growing desperation. Hours crawled by, each tick of the clock an agonizing echo of the time ticking away from the life I might be about to lose. Finally, a doctor emerged, his face etched with a grim solemnity that mirrored the knot of dread twisting in my gut. He spoke, his words a slow, monotonous drone, but all I heard was the confirmation of my worst fear. David hadn't made it. A faulty wire, an electrical fire. A tragic accident. The world tilted on its axis. David, the man I'd betrayed, the man I still cared for in a way I couldn't explain, was gone. The anger, the resentment, all the petty justifications for my actions evaporated, leaving behind a hollow ache and a crushing weight of regret. The funeral was a whirlwind of tear-stained faces and whispered condolences. His wife, not me, stood strong, surrounded by a loving family I'd thrown away for a fleeting infatuation with a con man. Shame, a searing brand, burned on my soul. David was gone, and a part of me, a part one hadn't even realized existed, had died with him. The future stretched before me, a vast unknown, filled with the bitter consequences of my choices. The price of my betrayal had been far steeper than I could have ever imagined. The official envelope landed on the threadbare welcome mat with a dull thud. Dread pooled in my stomach, a cold, familiar feeling that had become my unwelcome companion. Picking it up, I recognized the stark black seal of a lawyer's office. My hands trembled as I tore it open, the crisp legal jargon blurring before my eyes. But the finality of it hit me in the gut like a sucker punch. David's will, everything, and I mean everything, was left to his wife. Not a single token, not a single word of acknowledgement for the 10 years of our shared life. The betrayal stung, a fresh wound layered on top of a festering one. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was the finality of it, the cold, hard confirmation that our relationship, the good and the bad, meant nothing in the end. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring the legalese into an incomprehensible mess. A sob escaped my lips, a ragged sound that echoed in the empty apartment. This shoebox, once a symbol of my ill-fated independence, now felt more like a cage, a constant reminder of my colossal failure. David was gone, his life cut tragically short, and I was left with nothing but the wreckage of my own choices. The next blow came a few days later, another official-looking envelope arriving with a sickening predictability. Eviction notice. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum solo of impending homelessness. This was rock bottom, the harsh reality of my situation staring me down with a cruel indifference. There was nowhere to go but my sister's. Pride, a tattered ornament from a bygone era, threatened to hold me back, but desperation gnawed at the edges of my resolve. With a deep breath, I dialed her number, the familiar ringtone a lifeline thrown across a vast ocean of uncertainty. Hello? Her voice, brisk and efficient, filled my ear. It's me, I choked out, the words thick with shame. Silence stretched on the other end, a tangible weight pressing down on me. Then, a sigh. Look, she said, her voice devoid of warmth, you can stay here for a while. But don't expect a 5-star welcome. Her words were blunt, a truth bomb exploding in the fragile landscape of my self-pity. I deserved nothing less. The following weeks were a blur of cramped quarters, strained silences, and a relentless job search. My once respected career path felt like a distant dream. I took whatever work I could find, swallowing my pride with every minimum wage paycheck. Each menial task was a tiny penance, a self-inflicted punishment for the havoc I'd wreaked on my own life. One afternoon, while waiting for a crowded bus, a familiar face sent a jolt through me. Mark. But this wasn't the charming artist, the smooth-talking con man I'd fallen for. His eyes were dull, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He didn't see me, lost in his own world of failure. The urge to confront him, to expose him for the fraud he was, evaporated as quickly as it arose. Pity, a cold and unwelcome emotion, replaced the flicker of anger. He was a reflection of my own choices, a cautionary tale playing out